It's about to be like Saturday where you have fun and you spend time with your family or friends. And I really appreciate the time that you have taken to join us to share knowledge and to gain knowledge as well. So thanks for joining. And here we go with the India Cloud Security Summit, and it's going to be like a one-day virtual event that you people are here. We are focusing on Azure security, the security on Microsoft 365, Power Platform, and the endpoint security. So I would say, please don't miss the opportunity to be there with us until this evening, where you have you have some lucky draw as well, which is going to come up with. You have some quiz questions that you're going to answer, and you have some lucky draw that would be happening across, where you get a chance to win a Lenovo tab or like Echo Show, or you even get like a smartwatch, which is from Bot. Well, I would also really appreciate if you can just give up your hands to be raised for a scope for change, right? You can, it might be a rupees of like 50 or 100, or you do like whatever you come up with your all your heart to help the unprivileged students to change the future that they can work for. So that could be like one class of thing that you would be a reason behind to smile on plenty many hearts. And I'm here. I'm here to discuss for the next 1 hour, which is going to be about securely accessing your desktop application. So we'll be speaking from an infra point of view on how you can plan your AVD, your Azure Virtual Desktop, right, from the infra point of view, so that you can have your applications to be hosted in a secure way. And I'm once again Firoz. I would appreciate and thanks Vignesh on hosting this event. The entire team of Vignesh, Permal, and others too on making the arrangements for this event. And thanks to our sponsors too, who made this event to be a huge success, right? And I'm the founder and CEO of CodeSizzler. We are based out of India and Middle East. We are Microsoft partners taking care of migrations to Azure Cloud and setting up IoT workloads and moving the workloads which are set to be on SAP as well, right? From the on-prem to SAP or Oracle One or S4 HANA steps. Okay, so we do those kind of consulting and migration jobs, and we are part of like trainings delivering for Microsoft partners too. That's about me, and I'd love to do networking as well. You can surf with my long name over the LinkedIn, and I'd love to be in touch with you, or you can even keep me reached if you have any questions, which would be a part of the community events too. So let's start here with implementing and managing the networking for Azure Virtual Desktop. And the next, like I would say, the 45 minutes that I'm going to spend is set to be about how you can implement your Azure VNet connectivity, how you can manage the connectivity over the internet and the on-prem network, right, when you prefer for a hybrid connections. And we will also be discussing about understanding the Azure Virtual Desktop with network connectivity and the network security as well. Followed by that, how we can configure the AVD using the Azure Bastion. We are also going to have a touch base with the Azure Network Watcher that we will be coming up with. So it's going to be like an architectural discussion that we have. We're going to speak about services. We're going to speak about, the security checkpoints that you need to have it on your mind by the time that you're planning to implement. I would really appreciate if you can make it interactive. So it's not going to be like one way that I share something and I want you to grab the knowledge. Let's do some knowledge sharing, right? Let's make it interactive. And if you have any questions, you can keep it posted on the chat. The last 15 minutes, I'll be holding on to listen if you have any questions, and let's make it more interactive. Here I start with implementing the Azure Virtual Network Connectivity. So nowadays, the organizations want to monitor and repeat the health of the Azure Virtual Desktops, including the VMs, VNets, the application gateways, and even like load balancers that we have. So here in this quick part, the network connectivity, I'm going to speak about how you can keep a solution to be designed for a network connectivity with your AVD, and followed by that, implementing the Azure Virtual Network connectivity for Azure Virtual Desktop too. And of course, about describing how you can have the network security to be aligned all, okay, and how the Microsoft Bastion can be used with the Azure Virtual Desktop on configuring part. And we are also going to speak about how we can monitor the communication between the VMs and an endpoint that we have. I would say before getting onto the security part, you should be having a working experience with enterprise networking, or I would even say like you need to have a conceptual knowledge at least to understand the software defined on the networking part and the hybrid connectivity. So it's all like you have to understand about how the NSG is going to be configured as such. So here we go with the architecture, right? Or I would say a mapping of how the VNet enables the Azure resource to securely communicate with each other or over the internet and let's say even with the on-premise networks. The key scenarios that you can accomplish using a virtual network is all about the communication of Azure resource with the internet or the communication between Azure resource or let's say even the communication with the on-premise that we can come up with. It's all like you filter, you can filter the network traffic, you can route the network traffic as well, or we can even do the integrations with the Azure services. So communicating with the internet, right? It's like the basic stuff that you're gonna come up with. Communicating with the internet is like the resource in a VNet can communicate the outbound to the internet by default. So I can communicate the inbound to a resource by assigning, let's say, a public IP address. So if you're gonna connect with the internet, you just assign like a public IP address or a public IP load balancer as well, and you can then manage the outbound connections too. So when using only an internal standard load balancer, the outbound connectivity is not available until you define how you want the outbound connections to work with an instance. Okay, so you'll be having like an instance level of public IP or a public load balancer there. And communication between Azure resource, like you say, the IaaS or the PaaS services that we have here, no, it's like it's going to be through a VNet. I have just highlighted here. You see, it can be through a VNet, where you can deploy VMs and several other types of Azure resource to a virtual network, like a web app, which we say is an Azure App Service environment, or we can even go with the container environments like AKS or the container instance all, and we can even use like a VM scale set to be handled up then. We can also like manage the connectivity to the internet and the on-premise network in a secure way. So it's almost like what's wrong? Yeah, here we go. We can filter the network traffic. Like you can filter the network traffic between subnets using the NSG or with the network virtual appliance too. So network security group and the application security group that we say, right? It's all going to be it can contain multiple inbound and outbound security rules that enables you to filter the traffic towards or from the resource by securing the source and the destination IP address, the port, and the protocol that you're going to define. It's not that hard. You just give the port address, or you even have like templates that you can use it across. We then have the NVA, the network virtual appliance. That's like one other option. The network virtual appliance is a VM that performs a network function, like the firewall, the WAN optimization, or the other network function too. And here is about routing the network traffic. You can use like route tables, or you can use BGP. And we have like VPN connections where you can go with a point to site virtual network connectivity. So each computer will establish the communication with a VNet, and you can establish the peering connection then. Or we can even say site to site, like this is like between the on-premise site that you have and the site that you're going to come up with the cloud, right? So you put up an Azure VPN gateway to establish the communication then. And finally, we have the express route, which is a bit costlier solution, and it's faster in communication and it's secure. I mean, like it's all like secure, but then it helps you with the faster in communication compared to the site-to-site or the point-to-site VPNs that you use. The connection is completely set to be private, and the traffic goes. I mean, in the private network, it does not go over the internet. So it establishes between your network and Azure with this express route partner. You also need to know about this network connectivity that we come up with the Azure Virtual Desktop to keep it secure. So Azure Virtual Desktop, you can take this architecture that you see on the screen. I would say the Azure Virtual Desktop uses RDP, okay, the Remote Desktop Protocol, to provide remote display and input capabilities over the network connections. So the connection data flow for Azure Virtual Desktop starts with a DNS connectivity. It has a DNS lookup for the closest Azure data center that we have, and this image is all about like it shows the five-step connection process for the Azure Virtual Desktop running in Azure. So the very first thing is like it gets the authentication in the Azure AD, and a token is written to the remote desktop service client then. So the gateway checks the token with the connection broker, and the broker queries the Azure SQL database too for the resource that's assigned to the user. The gateway and the broker will select the session host for the connected client, and the session host will create a reverse connection to the client by using the Azure Virtual Desktop Gateway. The Azure Virtual Desktop hosts the clients on the the session host that's running on Azure, and Microsoft manages the portions of the services on the customer's behalf, and it provides the secure endpoints for connecting with the clients and the session endpoints then. So this gives you a high level overview of how the network connections are used by Azure Virtual Desktop. I would also say like you can go with this RDP short path to understand the managed network on how it's going to be featured for Azure Virtual Desktop that establishes a, excuse me, I'm sorry about it. So this establishes a direct UDP based transport between remote desktop client and the session host. The RTP uses, the transport to deliver remote desktop and remote app while offering better reliability and consistent latency too. So this is all together like the RTP short path transport is based on, we say URCP, the Universal Rate Control Protocol that we have, where the URCP enhances UDP with active monitoring of the network conditions, and it provides a fair and full link utilization too. So the URCP operates, at low delay and low loss levels as needed by the remote desktop. And the URCP also helps you in, you're going to achieve the best performance by dynamically learning the network parameters and providing the protocol with a rate control mechanism. So here I have given a comparison about you see the blue color which illustrates about the connect transport that we have, the public internet that gets connected with the client, and how the VM is going to communicate with the RDP gateway all. You also have the feed subscription, which is going to be like the client is going to communicate with the web that we have here over the public internet. And I have given the other proximities that you can find with the internal service traffic or the Azure AD Connect sync call. This architecture, like you can get the deck, you can get in touch with the cloud security team if you need. Sorry, the cloud security summit team you need to get the deck, and you also have like implementing and managing the network security here. So this is like an overall architecture again, where you can understand about how the Azure VM that you create for Azure Virtual Desktop must have the access to several fully qualified domain names here. Okay, so it has to work properly, right? You go with Azure Firewall that provides an Azure Virtual Desktop, the FQD and tag to simplify this configuration. So this is all like this architecture shows the steps to allow the outbound Azure Virtual Desktop platform traffic to perform that. See, the very first thing is that we deploy Azure Firewall and we configure the Azure Virtual Desktop host pool with a subnet, right? We have like UDR to route all the traffic via this Azure Firewall that we have in the middle. And it's all like your default route will now point to the firewall, and we then like create an we have like an application. You create an application rule collection. So there you go on, you create an application rule collection and add a rule to enable the Windows Virtual Desktop FUD and tag. The source IP address range is the host pool virtual network. The protocol is like HTTPS, and the destination is Windows Virtual Desktop that we get. The set of required storage and service bus accounts for your AVD host pool is the deployment specific, and it is not captured in the Windows Virtual Desktop FQDN tag. You also create like a network firewall rule. You can see here the virtual desktop platform outbound access will be filtered by this firewall, and you allow the DNS like allowing the traffic from your private IP address towards the TCP and UDP ports, right? And you also allow like KMS. You allow the traffic from your Azure Virtual Desktop machine to Windows activation servers with the TCP of 1688. The next that you need to know is about how we can configure the Azure Virtual Desktop session host, using the Bastion here, using Azure Bastion here. So this is all like the Microsoft Bastion provides secure connectivity to all the VMs in a virtual network in which it is provisioned. So you can like configure it manually, or you even have like a default option where you say like you connect using the Azure Bastion here. So using Azure Bastion, you're gonna protect your virtual machines from exposing towards the RDP or SSH ports, okay, to the outside world. And it's all like a VNet with a Bastion host will be already installed. It makes sure that you have set up an Azure Bastion host for the virtual network in which the VM is located. And once the Bastion service is provisioned and deployed in your VNet, you can use it to connect to any VM in the virtual network then. A Windows virtual machine in the VNet would be available, or you can even go with the required roles like a reader role on the VM or a reader role on the NIC with private IP of the virtual machine. Or we can even give up a reader role on the Azure Bastion resource then. So this is about like configuring Bastion towards your Azure Virtual Desktop. And we do have the network watcher. You have Azure Network Watcher. So that's all like the Azure Network Watcher provides tools to, you see, you're like monitoring, diagnosing, viewing the metrics, and enabling or disabling the logs for the resource. So it's all like the Network Watcher is designed to monitor and repair the network health of infrastructure service, including VMs, network switches, and endpoints that you have access to. We can monitor the communication between a virtual machine and an endpoint. So endpoints can be like another VM or let's say a fully qualified domain name, or I would even say a uniform resource identifier or the IPv4 address there. We do have the connection monitor. You see the connection monitor 2.0. So it's like monitors for helping in availability, latency, and network topology too. It changes between the virtual machine and the endpoint. And if an endpoint becomes unreachable, the connection monitor informs you. It gets like the potential issues or DNS names, resolution problems, CPU, memory, or even the firewall within the operating system of a virtual machine there. So you see, even the Azure, the non-Azure host use the Azure Monitor Agent or Microsoft Monitoring Agent to get the logs and get it troubleshooted as well. We have the data which is going to be stored in the Azure Monitor, and we have the log analytics workspace, just same like how it normally works for a virtual machine now. You need to configure the endpoints. It might be related to Microsoft 365, or it might be related to any SharePoint services, okay, or even like that desktop applications which are running in the Azure Virtual Desktop there. You also need to know about how we can plan and implement the remote desktop protocol in a shorter path. So this is all like I would say, an action plan to keep your environment to be secure, okay, to host your desktop applications. So now after establishing the reverse connect transport, the client and the session host will start the RDP connection, and it negotiates with the multi-transport capabilities that we have. Now it's going to be the same. The session host negotiates the multi-transport capabilities. And here the very first thing is that the session host sends the list of its private and the public IPv4 and v6 addresses to the client. And then the client starts. Okay, so here I have given the step-by-step illustration of how the client starts the background thread to establish a parallel UDP-based transport. It could be like directly towards one of the host IP address, And followed by that, we also speak like how the client is going to be probing the provided IP address. It continues the initial connection establishment, and we have the direct line of sight as well, which validates then. The RDP moves all the DVCs, and the firewall will be available, which prevents the client. Okay, you see here, we have the firewall. I'm sorry, I don't have like a pointer here, but you can just understand with the, I mean, the cursor moving on. So you see, it prevents the client from establishing the direct UDP connections, or the RDP continues with the reverse connect transport to them. We then have like configuring the remote desktop protocol with a shorter path, okay, for your managed network. So it's all like to enable the RDP shorter path listener, you first need to install. You see this pop up now. You will be installing the administrative templates that adds the rules and settings for Azure Virtual Desktop. You need to download the Azure desktop, I mean the virtual desktop policy templates file, and extract the contents of the, you will be having a zip archive file or the .cap file that you would be using it. You will then copy the, I mean the terminal server AVD file, and then paste it towards a respective directory on which we have like all the policy definitions. So here you see remote desktop servers, and we'll be having the policy definitions all that we'll be adding it here. We copy the, I mean, the ADML file, the AVD's ADML file, and then paste it into the directory. And to confirm the files copied correctly, you open the group policy editor, and see, this is the group policy editor. You go to the computer configuration, and there you can select like you'll be having an option for administrative templates. And just within that, you select like Windows components and select the remote desktop services. You can see my screen, right? You have this remote desktop services, and you can go to the remote desktop session host as well and select the Azure Virtual Desktop that would be available. You should see one or more Azure Virtual Desktop policies that would be available then, and you open the enabling RDP short path for managing the network policy and set it to enable as well. So if you enable this policy setting, you can also configure the port number that the Azure Virtual Desktop session host will use to listen for the incoming connections. I hope you should be knowing that the default port is like 3390 that we can use here. We can then go, we can configure the Windows Defender firewall with all the advanced security for the RDP short path. So to allow the inbound network traffic for this RDP, you use the Defender, the Microsoft Defender firewall with advanced security node with a group policy management tool. So you open the group policy management console to the Microsoft Defender firewall with the advanced security. And there you see this navigation pane, right? You can go to select the inbound rules that would be available. In the inbound rule, you need to select like action, okay? And then you select like you want to keep a new rule to be added up. So on the rule type, you can say the page of the new inbound rule wizard, and you can select like custom, and then you can give up the next to get it configured. So this is all like you have general, you can keep adding like the protocols of the ports. Okay, you can keep adding like a new rule, and what's going to be the protocol number or the local port, the remote ports all to be configured then. We also have like planning and implementing the quality of service for the Azure Virtual Desktop. So the quality of service implementation has few checklists that you need to define. Okay, I would say like you make sense with this. It's like at a high level, you do the steps that would be implemented for the quality of service. You make sure your network is ready. You also like make sure that RDP short path will be available for the managed networks. That's set to be enabled, and the QoS policies are not supported for reverse connected transport too. And we implement the insertion of DSCP markers on the session host. So I would say as you prepare to implement the QoS, you keep the guidelines I would say the shortest path to session host is best, and any obstacles in between, such as like proxies or packet inspection devices, no, those are not like recommended. So you are not supposed to use those things. And without some form of QoS, you might also see like issues that gets with jitter. Okay, the RDP packets are having to be on a different slow rates or speed rates, right? Which can result in the glitches that you find in a virtual desktop application to be slower, or you get like a glitch on the audio as well. And we have a packet loss. The packets can get dropped. Okay, so that's like one another issue that we find normally to reach their destinations. And it's also like it results in noticeable delays between input and reactions from the remote desktop applications. All so security factor plays a lot. Like you need to make sense from the part of you have to go with the network security group. You have to move on with the firewall that you configure. You can also have like the cloud migration to be kept on a secured way. And we have like you can monitor your cloud health. Okay, you have Azure virtual machines and the cloud with your Azure accounts where you can provision Windows or VMs in seconds, and you have to keep it like secure too. So that's like one other thing that you need to have it on your mind. We have a list of security best practices. I would say the security responsibilities. All maybe I will use a OneNote to illustrate those things. Give me a minute. Yeah, I will. I'll keep this as well shared with the team, okay, the host team, and you can make sense with them. So security responsibility is that you first need to know about identity, right? The security is needed for this identity part. I'm not sure if my screen is visible to you. Let me make it a bit higher. So secure identity is that the customer is responsible for this. Okay, this customer has to take care of the identity that you use. And user devices, the security that makes sense with the user devices, like it might be mobile or it might be PC that you're going to use. Again, I would say it's going to be when I say yes, it's going to be from the customer. Okay, and you also have like the app security that you need to take care. So this is all like what you have to play. Okay, and session host operating system. So you need to take care about the security over here. Deployment configurations, right? You need to play this role too for security. I can refer to the deck which I've shared. Network controls. I said network security group about the incoming connections, the outgoing connections, all. So you need to take care of these factors. So this is all like I would say. Maybe I will put up a pointer here saying that it's a customer responsibility to take care of, right? And now your question could be like, what Microsoft helps me on the Azure Virtual Desktop to take care of, right? So I will just put up here Microsoft plays on security, right? This is where the virtualization comes into the picture. So the security, which is related to virtualization, okay, the control plane will be by Microsoft that it's going to play. The physical host that you need to connect with, again, this is going to be taken care by Microsoft. Network, the physical network, okay, that you will be connecting with, that's again with the Microsoft part, and the physical data center too. So physical, let me say DC in short. So this will be again taken care by Microsoft as well. The security needs the customer. I mean, these things, it's not responsible or it's not handled by Microsoft. You need to take care of it. So what makes cloud service different from traditional on-premise virtual desktop infrastructure is that how they handle the security responsibilities. So in a traditional on-premise, I would say VDI, the customer would be responsible for all aspects of security. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. So in most cloud service, these responsibilities are shared between the customer and the company. So here we are speaking about Azure, and this is all like what Microsoft plays for you. I've already discussed about the best practices that we have. Microsoft uses the Microsoft Defender. So Microsoft uses Microsoft Defender. Okay, excuse me. So here, Microsoft Defender will take the role of managing the vulnerabilities that we have been discussing across. I don't have enough time to put up a AVD and show you the responsibility factors. Okay, maybe in the next session that we have, joining hands with the security team here, we'll be playing that. We also have like assessing the compliance, okay, with common frameworks like I would say PCI all, and we can also strengthen the right make strongness, excuse me, for the overall security part here of the environment. And then improve the secure score. We can like put up, the virtual desktop best practices. You can even try like I would say checklist that you need to take care again. We already discussed this on the deck. You have to take care of the conditional access. Excuse me. The conditional access is like you manage the risks before you grant the user access to your Azure Virtual Desktop environment. So this is all about like you're gonna decide which user to grant the access, and it's also like you recommend consider using who the user is, how they sign in, and which device that they're gonna sign in as well. Sorry about it. We then have MFA, the multi-factor authentication. So the multi-factor authentication is like it's common for all users and admins in the Azure Virtual Desktop who improve the security of your entire deployment. You will be enabling this Azure Active Directory multi-factor authentication for Azure Virtual Desktop. And yeah, so you just need to enable the audit logs, and rest will be taken care by Microsoft. So like you will be having your activity logs. You will be taking care of. I mean, Microsoft is going to take care of your Azure Active Directory activity log, the session host, the keyword logs all. And yes, you should be knowing that we can encrypt your VM all. Okay, so that's like something that we have. This is said to be the same factor when you speak about security for the Azure Virtual Desktop to host it on Azure Stack HCI as well. Okay, you have like the docs that's available, the Microsoft site, where you can find like what's the data storage, the pricing that it follows, the known issues, the limitations that we have as well. So that's like something which I wanted to discuss with you on the security. Oh, we have like enough time. Okay. I would just thank the sponsors as well. It had been not such a huge success without having the support of our partners here. So thanks Microsoft, Pentara, and Rapid Circle, the other folks as well, the Evanad all, who helped us to make this event to be on a huge success. And I'll be holding on here. I would love to hear from you if you have any questions, or if you want to take care of any like architectural discussions, please feel free to let me know. Any questions for me on the chat?